Can everybody hear me okay? I'll always start with sound check. It's quite good that I've got a clock I can look at because I'm keenly aware I've got a 5-minute slot here today. The first thing I'd like to say is a big thank you for giving Fiona and I the opportunity to come along this morning and talk for a few minutes about our Good Neighbour scheme. Age UK Isle of Wight is an independent island charity. Every penny we raise and every penny we're given goes back to providing services for older residents on the island. And Age UK does provide a wide range of services, and I have to say that about 2 years ago when I first started working with the charity, one of the things that really surprised me was how many services Age UK Isle of Wight do provide. And one of those services is our Good Neighbour scheme. In the last 18 months we've set up 23 schemes across the island which are providing much needed comfort care, and I'll explain a bit more about that in a minute, comfort care for our older neighbours who have nobody else to turn to. And as Tony said earlier, about 10 days ago we were very fortunate. We won a national award from the Charity Staff Foundation, which we went to London to receive, and we were first out of 3,500 other voluntary schemes across the UK, which we were very proud of. Our scheme is volunteer-led, and that's really important to us as well. So Fiona and I and the rest of the staff provide the back office support, but it's volunteer-led. So our volunteers tell us what they want to do, when they want to do it, and how they want to do it, and they always have the right to say no, and that's really important. So what do volunteers actually do then? Well, our volunteers provide comfort care support for older island residents who have no one else to turn to. And we define comfort care support as that little parcel of time or interest, and in a lot of occasions love, that you can show an older island resident who has no one else to turn to. And that makes them feel wanted and supported and part of the community again, and helps them to maintain their independence. And that's really important. And I have to say that we are the only charity on the island that currently give this type of service. So our comfort care packages then might include things like help with local transport, some light shopping, small tasks around the home, prescription collection, dog walking, letter writing, putting the bins out, or just paying a social visit. In fact, it can be anything as long as it stops short of personal care. We don't do personal care at all. But also our volunteers bring with them their own skill sets. So we've got volunteers that have come to our Good Neighbour scheme and said, look, we're very good with computers, can we go and help older people in the community use computers? And so recently we had a 92-year-old lady in Sandown who for the first time in her life had started to use a computer. She now sends and receives emails and talks to relatives on Skype. And in fact her first email was sent to Fiona, which we've got framed in the office. And that work is going on across the island a lot, because we recognise that computers, particularly if you're housebound, are another window on the world for you. We support volunteers, so as Tony said, we use the church and the roundabout quite a lot, but volunteers have the opportunity to come along to coffee mornings, we have bi-monthly lunches, we have cream teas, we have volunteer meetings, we have training packages that are ongoing, and we have a Christmas do as well. So for volunteers there's quite a bit that's going on as well. And this summer we had our summer cream tea at Hazley Manor, which was very nice. We constantly have got, and currently have got 23 schemes up and running. So we've got 6 schemes that are in development. One of the schemes that we do have running is actually run by the 6th form students at Christ the King College. And they provide comfort care support for older neighbours in the area of their school, and they put on venues at the school, so they do coffee mornings and stuff like that. And we've had such a lot of interest that we're hoping to roll that model out around schools on the Isle of Wight. So over the next year you could see, or we hope you're going to see quite a bit in the county press about how our Good Neighbour scheme is being embraced by school pupils. Last year we carried out 31,000 hours of comfort care support for older neighbours on the island who would not have got that from anywhere else, and that was carried out by 360 volunteers, and they were supporting 450 older neighbours. Now every time I do a presentation I write all these numbers out and I look at them and I kind of trot them out, but every time I do a presentation I have to alter those numbers because they're going up all the time. So we're increasing those numbers on the island at about 20 a month. So one of the questions that I get asked a lot when I do presentations is, why do we need a Good Neighbour scheme? Why do we actually need one here on the island? And we think part of that is where we are historically and economically, because we've got really savage cuts going on with all sorts of services that older neighbours had previously relied on and were there. But it's also to do with our demographic. We've got 144,000 people who live on the island. 77,000 of those are over 50. And the National Census Office told us recently that anybody over the age of 50 is officially an old person, which shocked quite a few of the people that I work with. But even more significantly, 1 in 4 people over on the island, and when I went to school that's 25%, 1 in 4 people who live on the island are over 65. And the National Census Office again told us recently that anybody over 65 is an old person, whatever that is. Now, the reason the 25% is really, really important is that nationally that statistic is only about 12%. So on the island we've got twice as many old people, if you like, as everywhere else on the mainland, except 2 other areas. One's in Torquay and one's in London. So we've got a demographic reason why a Good Neighbour scheme is really important. And the National Census Office told us again that over the next 10 to 15 years, that number of people on the island over 65 will increase by 10 to 15,000, which will make that number nearly 1 in 3. And the money is just not there to go around to provide the services. So we really have to kind of start looking to each other. So, why should we be interested in volunteering? I can stand here today as a Christian and say that I happen to think the Isle of Wight is a really cool place to live when you compare to some of the other places on the mainland. I also believe very strongly, personally, in stewardship. I believe that we are all responsible to wisely use the gifts that God has provided us. That's our talents, our time, our finances, our families, and also our relationships. And I do really believe that. That's very fundamental to me as a person. And I believe very strongly in looking after those that have not been so well blessed. And those for reasons beyond their control are not so fortunate. And this includes our older neighbours who have no one else to turn to. They're in that position not because they chose to be like that, but every one of them we know through our dealings in the office has a story. A national survey recently told us, in the last 2 weeks actually, that out of all people over 65 in the UK who are single, half spend 100 days a year on their own, which is shocking. And 3 out of 4 of those who are surveyed said that they spent 3 out of 4 weekends on their own. And that loneliness is really chronic. It affects every aspect of their life. And we know that from our feedback and monitoring on the Good Neighbour scheme, because all our older neighbours on the island tell us that loneliness and lack of socialisation or lack of contact with people is their number 1 priority, and it's their number 1 worry. And there is a difference between being lonely and being alone. I like my own company. I like to be on my own, but I don't like being lonely. And it's the same for older neighbours too. And sometimes the difference between being alone and being lonely is just having somebody come around once a week for 20 minutes to have a cup of tea and just make sure you're okay. Okay, well, I'm going to finish now because I've got my eye on the clock. When I do my full presentations, when I'm looking to recruit volunteers, I have 2 problems. The first is that I have to convince people they're volunteering material. And everybody will sit in the room and listen to one of my full presentations and they'll say, do you know what, Mark, that's a fantastic scheme, but I don't think I'm the volunteering type. Well, if you can take a pint of milk round to somebody, or a county press, or you can sit and drink a cup of tea and watch the TV with somebody, you are volunteering material. Because most of the time that's what our volunteers do. And the other thing is I have a problem in trying to convince people that they've got disposable time, because we're all really busy. So I have 2 examples for that. The first is me. I do 5 days a week in my role. I'm out 3 nights a week at least doing presentations, and I'm a Good Neighbour scheme volunteer because I go and visit an elderly lady in Cowes. And the second example I'll give you is a true story, and I'm finishing up there, Tony, so I've got my eye on the clock. But it involved a talk I did in Ryde about 18 months ago. And at the end of the talk, this chap came along and he said, "Look, I really would like to be a Good Neighbour scheme volunteer. I'm at that time in my life where I really want to give something back to the community, but I'm a bank manager and I work in Portsmouth, and I commute every day from Ryde. Sometimes I don't get in till 9 o'clock in the evening, and I'm so tired and so busy, but I'm trying to look in really for an opportunity to do something on your scheme. So we said to him, come on our scheme as a one-off volunteer. We won't allocate you to somebody or ask you to go and see somebody regularly, but if we've got that what we call a one-off task where somebody needs a light bulb changing, or perhaps they need a newspaper put them through their door, we'll ring you, and the deal is if you're in, and you're available, you can do it. If you're not, you're not. And we're cool with that. And at the same time, we had an elderly lady who was in her 80s in Ryde, who had no friends or family, and she saw one of our posters in a shop window in Ryde, and her problem was that over a period of about a year, every light bulb in her house had gone, except her kitchen, and she was going around her house at night with a torch. Now, we know in our office that it would have only been a matter of time before that lady would have tripped up and fallen, and probably broken her leg or her hip. An elderly person is very serious. So she rang our office and spoke to us and said, look, I've got loads of light bulbs under my sink, but I can't put them in because I can't lift my arms up. Have you got a volunteer that can come round and do it for me? We said, yeah. So we rang this chap who happened to be in, and he only lived 2 roads away from where this lady lived. But within 10 minutes he was at her house changing her light bulbs. So we can say on our scheme that actually with 10 minutes of your time you can make a difference in the life of a person, an older person, because that man only gave us 10 minutes. We only used him once in a year, but we know that he probably saved the life of that lady, or at least saved her from a serious injury. And so when I'm feeling really cheeky, I will look around the room and say that there's nobody here that is that busy that they can't give their older neighbour 10 minutes a year to make a difference in their lives. Thank you very much. Thank you.